Hi, it's me, Adrienne. Somebody's agreed to let me make a movie again that never fails to surprise me and delight me.
She craved having her voice heard and her vision be out there.
From when she was 5 years old, when she was in kindergarten, she always stood out. It was always Adrienne.
It happened quickly. In no time, she was the star of this indie cult film.
I'm sitting in a diner, freaked beyond belief. What have we learned here? Write it and direct it yourself.
She really knew what she wanted. She had such a clear idea of it.
You're coming, you're rushing.
Okay, I messed it up a little bit.
It's fine, I don't care.
Her greatest joy was that child.
She was the happiest I'd ever seen her. I went to bed that night the luckiest guy alive. By the next night, I was living the worst nightmare imaginable.
My phone rings, and you said, "Brian, get up here. Adrienne's dead."
I just remember I fell to the ground, and I started screaming.
I got a call from the detective, and he said, "Andrew, we arrested the guy who killed Adrienne."
Not a minute of every day goes by without me thinking of Adrienne and what my daughter Sophie has lost. What the world has lost.
This was going to be her moment. How are we here? And she's not.
I just have a very specific kind of satisfaction when I see Waitress on a Broadway marquee.
I was going for a tone where you can find what's funny in what's painful, which has always kind of been my strategy anyway in life.
You're almost the same age as her here.
Don't be afraid of dying, be afraid of never living.
You. Hey, Andy.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
Excellent.
So nice to meet you.
Likewise.
I don't know. I don't know if you, through Betsy, but if you had heard of a kind of a loose affiliation connection that I felt with the story of the documentary. And I didn't know if you got back to you. Okay. It's really not all that huge, but well, although it might mean something to you. So I'm from the city, and I'm living a little further north now in the Hudson Valley. But years ago, when Adrienne was killed, in that period, my mother used to take my niece to the same school as your daughter went to in the village.
Oh, Children's Aid Society?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So around that time, I guess you and my mom said hello in the morning. She's an older woman named Julie. It's so many years ago. Andy, I'm not asking you to recollect her in particular.
No, I'm just glad I said hello to somebody.
I think, well, I remember her coming back, and I remember when I would see her around that time, and when this tragedy occurred, that she was very, very upset by it, that she saw you there in the mornings dropping off your daughter, Sophie, excuse me. And, was very just moved and I think very upset for you. My mother was a very empathic person.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt kind of, because I missed my mom, and, I kind of just felt, I really, this story touches me, and I felt something of a connection because of that, and although I was always, unlike the people that were heading into the Broadway musical at the beginning of your film, I know who Adrienne was very well. And I was a big fan, and I'm very friendly now with Hal Hartley. As a result of the show for years, I've had Hal on many, many times over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And we've done a bunch of stuff together, and Thomas J. Ryan and a number of the other folks from his little stable of Bill Sage and Robert
Sure.
and all those guys, that some of whom are in the film. And so with all that, I said, yes, I definitely have to invite you on my show here and talk about your documentary.
Well, thanks again for having me.
Yeah. Can I ask, there's one of the things that comes up in the story is the guy who, Diego
Pilco,
who killed Adrienne. One of the sort of what would you call it, subplot strings of the stories is this, are you going to, you've been in contact with him, correspondence with him. And I wonder, was that leading up to, this correspondence, did that have an influence on your timing with the documentary? Why?
No, it all happened around the same time.
Okay.
It just happened that when I was ready to do something that I had thought about for years, I was also in the process of developing the film.
Well, talk a little bit, I guess, about the other, maybe the things that were, I guess, motivating you. Some of which you do talk about in the film. Perhaps you want her. Was this for your daughter? I mean, to some degree.
The motivation for what specifically?
Oh, just even making the documentary now.
Well, the documentary was envisioned to cover three main elements: life, death, aftermath. Life being biographical, death being a focus on what happened to her, and the aftermath basically about the 12 or so years that ensued after she died and before I started making the film. And there was three critical questions that needed to get answered. One was, who is Adrienne Shelly? What really happened November 1st, 2006? And how does a family navigate the unfathomable? And so the goal was always to bring Adrienne back to life for viewers, to make them get to know her, to make them like her, fall in love with her, grieve and mourn her absence in a way that we had over the years. But most importantly, to humanize her as a wife, a mother, a sister, a daughter, a friend, a colleague, not to have her out there as a murder victim. And and then ultimately, a takeaway that I hope people have from the film is like, wow, what a cool woman. I'm going to go back and check out her work. I didn't know who she was, and when we start with her films that she acted in very early on, the Hal Hartley stuff, and then let's travel along her career with her as she started to write and direct. That's ultimately, when you talk about legacy, it's one of my main motivations is to continue building her legacy, expanding her legacy through this film.
Were you worried about how you would take this process emotionally, how you would handle it emotionally?
Yeah, I think one of the things that is important for any of us in life is to know what we do and know what we don't do. Like, I know what I can't do. If you want to explore space travel, I'm not your guy. You're going to be doing a lot of walking on Earth. But I knew I could do this film. And I also knew that while, yes, it would be incredibly emotional, I just knew that the way I'm wired, I can compartmentalize. I can wear two hats and be authentic in each one. I could be an authentic subject and leave myself on the table for viewers to make whatever they want from that. And I thought I could also be an effective director by putting aside, when I needed to, those personal feelings and just make a good film.
So the director and the subject got along.
They did.
The making of the films.
Sometimes they didn't, but they talked. They worked it out, and I think they always came to the right conclusion.
There was a negotiation, going on.
Life is negotiation.
No, it's all about negotiations. Yeah. Well, I say I would say this as I watched it. One of the bravest moments I feel that you exposed about yourself was the grieving, how you grieved. And like you said at one point, I got, you kind of handled it, almost some of the grief devastation, and there was a practical level. You had to, because there was Sophie to think about, right? You had to you had to figure out how to survive this for your daughter, for yourself, you know. And I just think it's most people, you know, they're used to seeing more maudlin expressions of grief, where the people say, I'm you know, I have no reason to live, and that kind of thing, where
Right.
I feel like you're exposing that makes people think, oh, that's very honest.
You know, everybody's different. And over the years, I've had people say, you know, you throw platitudes at me like, you know,
yeah,
it's amazing what you've done. And, you know, the truth is, I never thought about any of it. I just, you know, I got up in the morning and said, okay, today I need to do X. There was no higher, you know, force driving it. It was just the way I was wired. And I know that not everybody is like that, you know, and I feel very fortunate that I had tools that, you know, just made me do whatever it is I needed to do. I'm sure that not every parent who is faced with tragedy, you know, does the right thing by their children. You know, some people don't do that when they're not faced with tragedy.
That's a good point.
So I don't, you know, I always refer to that Chris Rock routine where he says about certain men, like, you know, I take care of my kids. And he's like, well, what do you want, a cookie? Like, that's your job.
right.
You know, like I don't look at what I did as anything special. I just am thankful that I had just some organic tools to work with that gave me strength, gave me confidence, gave me what I needed to plow through this nightmare.
What was your introduction to Adrienne?
We met on Match.com.
What? Okay.
You know,
I guess I mean, what was your introduction? So, like, you know, even in a broader sense, like, were you familiar with her work as an actor?
No. When we met on Match.com, I had no idea who she was. First of all, she had a fake name because she had some celebrity. She didn't want to be out there.
Right.
And I got this really fun email saying that, you know, I'm an actor and I've turned a few heads in my day. That's a quote.
It's nice.
Which I thought was very humble. A very humble way of saying I'm pretty good looking, you know. And so when I met her, I really had no idea who she was. You know, she burst onto the indie scene in the early 90s. Awesome. And by the early 90s, as a 32-year-old guy, I had 3 kids. I was diapering babies. I didn't go out to the Angelica. I had no idea what, you know, what I wouldn't know an indie ingenue if I tripped over her. And so, and that's why my favorite part of the film is with my friend Cliff, when we recall the story of how, what is that? Stop. Of when I met her, he was, you know, very surprised that someone like her was going out with someone like me. And when I told him,
why is that? What were you, I mean,
I'm sorry?
Because you were so kind of clueless about who she was.
Oh, no, he was just giving me
just
shit.
Because
like,
you know, this was also, you had come out of 2 marriages, right? So maybe your friends.
I was married twice before that. And no, I think it was just, you know, the kind of shit your friend, you know, guy friends do. It's like, you know, hey, loser boy, you know, like what, you know, what's someone like her going out with a guy like you? It was just, you know, it was just guy talk.
Right.
But it was a fun conversation because in that conversation, I was like, who is this woman that you are so excited about that I have no idea, you know, who she is?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when he said to me, you know, you most days I feel sorry for you. This isn't one of them. And so I didn't meet or fall in love with the indie ingenue. I met and fell in love with Adrienne Levine, basically the sweet Jewish girl from Long Island. And that's who I got to know. That's who I fell in love with. And then I discovered who she was. And, you know, to be honest, to this day, she starred in about 20 films. Maybe I saw 6 or 7 of them, you know, because I wasn't interested in that part of her life, you know, that was just what she did. So things that she was excited about, are the things I took an interest in when she wrote and directed her own films,
right?
Short films, those I got very intimate with. But her career as an actor, it wasn't a big thing for me when I met her. I didn't know her, and it really wasn't that big a deal for me after.
Right. It's honest. As you talk about the things that, the things about her essence, about her authenticism as a person, that attracted you, I feel like those are how Hal Hartley talked about her when he was looking, when he's casting her. He just found somebody who was so unique and herself, and somebody who's, very obviously very special and talented, and
well, she had a physical beauty.
Have a track record.
No,
well,
but she had a physical beauty back then that when you're a director and you're saying, hey, do you want to be in my film? Send a headshot. That jumped off the page. And then when he met her, Bob Burke tells me a story that the day they met her, there was a room full of other actresses sitting in the hallway waiting to come in. And he looked at Hal and he was like, we're done, right? Like, she's the one. Like, we don't need to see these others. Yeah. Because she was so clearly perfect for the part, and not just physically. It was that her humor, her intelligence and like she says in the film, Audrey in that first film was more of who she was. The character was a young girl from Long Island, so it was an easier role for Adrienne to get inside of. Maria from Trust was much more complicated for her. So when they met her, the qualities that she had, were in a sense the same qualities that I met, years later, and what was attractive and very appealing to me.
It's hard to believe how that she was such a, an inexperienced actor in those first Hal Hartley films, because she does exude a certain confidence, as an actor, like her relationship with the camera, with other actors. And it's funny because Bob Burke, as you mentioned, called him, he sort of found her a little intimidating, this very petite, newbie of an actor, but and he's kind of like, macho kind of guy, I guess you could say, the classical sense, But,
she had a confidence. She had a confidence that came across, and that can be intimidating.
Sure.
Especially like, for someone like Bob, it was an early film of his. I don't remember if it was his first film or maybe his second film, but he was a young actor. And that's so, true. When you come across someone who you're cast with and they have such confidence, it's very understandable how that could be a little off-putting and intimidating.
Right.
But in a good way.
I agree. The name of the documentary is called Adrienne, and it's going to be premiering on HBO. That's the one that's on the cable, right?
It's HBO and HBO Max. So it's everywhere. Yeah. Everywhere there's HBO, you can find it.
Yeah. It's going to be December 1st, right? It's going to premiere
December 1st, this Wednesday at 8 p.m. on cable, and I think it's simultaneously available to stream.
It's a very powerful and moving documentary. I'm not ashamed to say I was brought to tears a couple of times. Your daughter certainly brought me to tears. She's takes after you. It's so clearly on some level anyway. But maybe obviously both of you, and she certainly is stunning and looks so much like Adrienne, and was just such a great character or subject. You cast your documentary very well. That's what I'm saying. She was delightful. What did she make of the film? What did she say?
When she saw the first serious cut of the film, almost in its final stage, she was very emotional, and she thought it was great, and she told me she was proud of me, and it was a beautiful moment, and being a teenage girl, I could tell you as a parent of a teenager, you don't have a lot of those moments during those years. Teenagers are very standoffish,
Right.
But it was I think she saw the realization of what I'd been working on for years.
She got it.
And she got it. And she, but she's a teenager. She's a teenager during a pandemic, and she's also at an age where she's really trying to come to terms with what happened to her and her mom, and figuring that out now as a young adult. And so there's just a lot going on for her. But she was able to see how this incredible person who brought her into the world comes off the way she should, is in a documentary about her life and her career.
Well, in addition to your daughter and to Robert Burke, who we mentioned, and Hal Hartley is in the film. We have Paul Rudd's in the film, so many folks. Who was a couple of others? I wrote them down before, but I lost my list.
Oh, Kerry Russell,
Kerry, of course.
Cheryl Hines.
Carol Hines, of course.
Sarah Bareilles.
We should mention they were those three actors, the two of Cheryl and Kerry, as well as, of course, Adrienne, were in Adrienne's film. Huge success. Waitress.
Jeremy Sisto also.
Jeremy Sisto. And Waitress is still on Broadway.
It is, and it's closing, I think, January 9th, I want to say.
Oh my gosh. Well,
it was a limited run since Broadway reopened.
Should go and see it. It looks, it's tremendous. And and by all means, see this documentary on HBO. It's very special. And there's a huge just arc to it. And I really urge people to see it. I think whether are familiar with Adrienne's career or not, I don't think it matters, frankly, because I think you did a spectacular job. Congratulations, and
thank you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Likewise. Thanks for spending some time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All righty. Have a good evening.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.